Thank you so much for that. And I want to welcome and thank you, everyone here, for joining us. For more than 4 years now, since June 18, 2019, tribal leaders and I stood with Governor Newsom under a canopy of oak trees at the future site of the California Indian Heritage Museum in West Sacramento. We were there at the request as he issued a historic apology to the state's Native Americans for the genocide and other acts of violence, mistreatment, and neglect inflicted upon California Native Americans throughout the state's history. He also announced the creation of the Truth and Healing Council to provide an avenue for California Native Americans to clarify the record and provide their historical perspective. That welcome and groundbreaking event signaled a new beginning, a new chapter in the state's history with its relationship with California's First People. As we gather today to further the healing process initiated in 2019 by the governor, we must also seek the return of our ancestors' remains, now in the state's possession, specifically those in the possession of the California State University system. Those human remains, rightfully and morally, belong to the tribal families for proper and respectful reburial. It is very concerning that decades after federal and state laws were enacted to repatriate remains and cultural objects, almost nothing has been done to fulfill that obligation. The Cal State University's dismissive and disrespect failure to comply with the law reminds us that while California has taken major steps in building trust and relationships in healing with California's First People, we still have much work to do. Following this news briefing, we will be conducting a joint hearing in room 447 in the Capitol to probe why the Cal State University system has failed to return almost 700,000 Native American remains, but also to work together to ensure that we have a path forward. When we look at the things that are going on here in the state of California, there still remains the work to be done in the unified approach with the administration, the state of California, to ensure that our ancestors are not seen as trophies in a classroom, trophies in curatorial facilities, and to ensure that using the remains is something that's not allowable in the classrooms. We continue to work together to ensure that there is a path forward. And with me today is the chairman of the Joint Audit Committee, who I would like to offer up to the podium to say a few words.
I want to start off by thanking my colleague, Assemblymember Ramos, for giving us the opportunity to be here today. We would not be having this conversation, we would not be at this press conference, and we would not be having a hearing in a few minutes on this very important issue if it wasn't for his leadership, and I thank him for that. I thank him also for requesting the audit so that we could have the facts before us of what's happened over the course of the last several decades. I personally was shocked and saddened by the results of the audit that showed how little effort has been made by the California State University system over the last 30 years in order to protect and to abide by the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, which was enacted in 1990. Cal NAGPRA was enacted in 2001. It's been over 20 years. After all these decades, the audit found that more than half of CSU campuses have not repatriated any remains or cultural items. More than half of our 21 campuses don't even know the extent of the collections, something the federal law required to be completed 28 years ago. At today's hearing, we will hear the facts. We will have discussions with 4 CSU campuses. Collectively, these 4 campuses that will come before us have more than 450,000 remains and cultural items in their possession. That is well over half of all the remains in the CSU collections. Even more shocking, 3 of the 4 campuses have collectively combined repatriated less than 0.2% of the remains and the items that they hold. So today we will call on them to account for their lack of action. We need to know why they have ignored federal and state law, and we need to know why they continue to disrespect this important law, the remains and the original inhabitants of our beautiful land. I really can't think of anything more personal or meaningful to individuals or people than ensuring that one's ancestral remains and belongings are given the respect and the dignity that they deserve. Today I'm hoping we will hear more and that we will be led to believe and acknowledge that CSU will speedily, expeditiously implement the state auditor's recommendations and come into compliance with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. Once again, I want to thank my colleague, Assemblymember Ramos. We look forward to the hearing. We will have the state auditor present, introducing and presenting the report. We will have a discussion and questions on that report, on the facts that were found, and we will demand that action on a going forward basis. So thank you, Mr. Ramos.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Alvarez. Next, also, we have our colleague, Assemblywoman Soria, who's here to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here because the issue is extremely critical to the state of California, and I was also shocked to hear the results of the audit, a very critical and necessary audit, and I do want to thank Assemblymember James Ramos for his incredible leadership on this issue, for ensuring that the audit committee, finished this audit that obviously we don't like the results, but it's important information so that we're able to continue to move forward. Obviously, there's been a lot of work that has happened here in the state of California to rectify the wrongs that were done to California's first people, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm proud to stand here as a strong supporter to ensure that we continue to move in that right direction of healing, of developing trust amongst our communities, and that at the end of the day, the CSU system does the right thing, which is to comply with both state and federal law. And what is great is that we're having this hearing for accountability and to get those answers that not only we need as leaders, but that California's first people deserve to hear directly from those that have been in charge and involved in their decisions of not complying with both federal and state law. And so I'm hopeful, and we will continue to ask the tough questions and get to a place, I'm hoping, that we can begin to, as my colleague mentioned, expeditiously comply and continue the great work that Assemblymember James Ramos has done to ensure that we rectify the wrongs that the state has done to California's first people.
Thank you. Well, thank you for those comments from our colleagues and the importance of this issue. This importance of this issue is something that has to have the voice of California's First People. And with us today, we have speakers from different tribes and nations throughout the state of California. First, I'd like to bring up the Vice Chairman of the people of San Manuel's tribal government, Johnny Hernandez.
I'm Tom Shalom. My name is Johnny Hernandez, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the San Juan Nation. It is with a heavy heart that I stand before you today to discuss the issue that not only impacts my people, but Indian country as a whole. Tribes across the state have encountered challenges with their repatriation by the CSU and UC systems, a long-standing issue that continues to impact our families, culture, and traditions. Whether it's an intricately woven basket that represents a family's rich history or other object, each item tells a story and is sacred to the people where it originated. There's been disturbances of grave sites on ancestral lands and remains of loved ones, our ancestors, being held without the opportunity to internally rest in peace. Imagine your family, your ancestors, and their belongings that you hold near and dear that are owned and used under the guise of an artifact on display for the public's learnings and teachings. What we are discussing today is a matter of humanity, family, culture, and traditions, and the respectful treatment of what is most sacred to the identity and preservation of my people. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act was designed to protect Native American grave sites and establish a process for tribes to request the return of cultural items and their human remains. Instead, we are faced again with the demoralizing reality through this audit that our own California State University system is clearly unable to comply with mandated legislation. Tribes have long sought the opportunity for consultation and repatriation efforts, and today we call for action by the California legislature to require the CSU system to make progress in repatriating collections of culturally significant items and allowing remains of loved ones to be brought home. Hakupa'i, Amai. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnny Hernandez. Next, we would like to bring up Vice Chairwoman Melissa Tayabi of the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. Hey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Tayaba, and I am the Vice Chairman of Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. I'd like to thank Assemblymember James Ramos and Assemblymember David Alvarez for calling this news briefing in light of the recent and troubling California audit report published on the California State University system that irrefutably details the extent of its system-wide failure to repatriate hundreds of thousands of Native American remains and artifacts held in collection across the state. I applaud your efforts to come together to spread awareness on the sick and tragic finding. Yet for California tribes, this is just another step in our endless and ongoing efforts to get CSU and similar institutions to return our ancestors and cultural items that have been allowed to stay in their possession far beyond any time frame a reasonable person could possibly deem appropriate, given the decades since NAGPRA and CalNAGPRA have been passed. The failures at CSU, and may I add the UC system, are at every level, from lack of funding, comprehensive processes, training, reporting, and even simple, meaningful consultation with the tribes to which these remains belong. It is appalling, unacceptable, and shameful. The excuses given over decades now are hollow and must be dealt with by all parties involved, either through enforcement or accountability when a demonstrable lack of progress is identified, much like that the CSU audit has just revealed. Later this morning, there will be a joint informational oversight hearing hosted by the respective assembly chairs I mentioned earlier. I encourage all my fellow tribal leaders and advocates at home to tune in and listen as state officials, staff, and other tribal citizens share their perspectives in response to the CSU audit findings, and where you will have an opportunity to share your own. The time for action is now. This hurt is not with any single tribe, but in every tribe of California's First Peoples. I know that with our collective voice, we will be able to help produce the change necessary to ensure that the generations of our families that have remained broken and unable to be whole are allowed to heal and be restored with the return of our relatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those words. Now I'd like to bring up Chairman Jack Potter of the Redding Rancheria Tribal Government.
Good morning. I'm Jack Potter, Jr., Tribal Chairman of Redding Rancheria of Wintu Indians. This report is sad and heartbreaking as we're still trying to rebuild our nations from the genocide that happened to our people. It is hard when we know the spirits of our ancestors are locked on shelves. And if you've never got the chance to go into those places, go and see our people sitting like a book in a library, waiting to come home. It's heartbreaking. When I picked up a grandmother and her 5 grandchildren 2 years ago, I could hear noises like white noise, but even stronger. And I kept looking, and as the gentleman from UC Berkeley he asked me, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I hear noises coming from down under that building." "Oh, that's where they are stored." And I could hear the different languages of the thousands of people stored on that shelf. It was bothersome to my heart and my spirit. And as I went down in there, I needed a moment to myself. I asked them to step out. And as we picked up her and her 5 grandchildren, I looked at the hole in her head, her broken pestle, and I knew that's how she had to have died. As she was preparing acorn mush for her grandchildren for supper, someone came along and bashed her head in and broke her tool over her head. The grandchildren had no skulls. There was only little leg bones and feet bones. We have to go through this. And we shouldn't. Our people should be left lying to rest where they were put to rest. We have to create songs. We have to create these things. And now to find out that this report has over 700,000 of our people that we still have to bring home. Like Moses said to the pharaohs, I say to the USC, let my people go.
Thank you, Chairman Potter. Next, I'd like to bring up Chairperson Janet Bill of the Picayune Rancheria of Chichansi Indians.
Hilly Hilly, Hoi Woshnam, Chairperson Janet K. Bill of the Picayune Rancheria of the Chukchansi Indians, a sovereign nation located near Madera County, near the south entrance of Yosemite National Park. On behalf of my nation, Michkais, thank you to the Honorable Assemblymember Ramos, Assemblymember Alvarez, and members of both committees in your efforts to hold the California State University system accountable for its incompliance with NAGPRA and CalNAGPRA and its continued atrocities to our tribal communities. Our ancestral remains and cultural items are the foundation of our tribe's identity and heritage. This foundation connects our present-day descendants with our ancestors, providing a sense of continuity and belonging. While NAGPRA and CalNAGPRA aim to protect Native American grave sites and create a process to return ancestral remains and cultural items to our people, absent compliance, these laws are degraded to nothing more than words on paper, full of empty promises. The findings in this audit report serve as a reminder that we all have a collective responsibility to ensure compliance with these laws, and most importantly, to bring our loved ones and heritage home. Our tribe stands with our fellow Indigenous people around the world who believe that repatriation is healing, repatriation is decolonization, repatriation is justice. We must continue to dismantle the barriers to repatriation that were created after centuries of marginalization and disenfranchisement of our tribal communities. Today, we call on the state of California and the California State University's Chancellor's Office to make systemic changes that not only ensures compliance with NAGPRA and CalNAGPRA, but most importantly, frees our ancestors and brings items that once were stolen back home. Specifically, we call on our partners to create a CSU NAGPRA advisory board comprised of tribal leaders and other key partners, engage in meaningful consultation with tribes regarding protocols for repatriation, and implement standardized repatriation policies and procedures for all CSUs, and require an annual oversight hearing where tribes, CSU personnel, the Native American Heritage Commission, and other key partners discuss the remaining barriers to repatriation and progression of the CSU's compliance with NAGPRA and CalNAGPRA. All efforts to protect, respect, and comply with repatriation are paramount to preserving our culture for future generations. As always, we stand strongest together. Our nation is committed to partnering with the state of California, the California State University systems, our fellow tribal leaders, and other key partners in addressing the negative findings of this audit and barriers to repatriation. Michigais, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next, we will hear from Chairman Leo Siskiyou from the Tachi Yokut people.
Here Nemoyes Soket. In English, my name is Leo Siskiyou. I'm the chairman of the Santa Rosa Rancheria Tachi Yokut tribe, centralized in the San Joaquin Valley. And to hear, first of all, again, thank you, James Ramos, Assemblymember Ramos, for his leadership in this very important issue to all of Indian country. For us as Tachi people in Indian country, it's painful to see over 700,000 are sitting in boxes, tagged, numbered, on shelves. You know, not only is the CSU and the UC system disrespecting the laws, but they're disrespecting the memory of our people. It's as painful as the past is, it must be addressed. And the pain and that's something that we welcome it, because if we divert it, we just hurt even more and more. And to bring our ancestors home is of vital importance. And the question that I would have for CSU and the UC system, what do you benefit by having our people in boxes? You know, this is something that's it's with the utmost disrespect. And you see here today, we stand together in unison in the repatriation of our people, because that's the right thing to do. You know, we don't disrespect. No, we ask for equality in this matter. We ask that we all continue to work together, and hopefully one day that we can bring all our ancestors home, all their belongings, to sit there and, you know, the sufferings that they had to endure through state and federal sponsored genocide, that the governor, and we appreciate the governor for saying so, but it needs to go many steps further to bring our people home, to not only acknowledge the truth, but to push the envelope, to hold the feet to the fire, and to address that truth in our local school systems, and to understand what really happened to our ancestors, you know, to the Spaniards, to the federal government, to all of us that have to sit here and go through this. You know, our ancestors, you know, many of our great-grandparents some of them are still alive. You know, they're afraid to talk about these things because it's so hurtful. They cry, and it's, you know, they hold it within their heart, and they keep it a secret. They don't want to share this. But this is something that, you know, Assemblymember Ramos is bringing to light, and we appreciate everything that you have done, Mr. Ramos, and to be able to sit here in front of you today. It's a truly humbling experience to be able to speak in front of you on behalf of my ancestors, because I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting in this position today. So thank you for all your time, and thank you for your assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. We also have with us Chairman Dennis Ramirez.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Ramirez, Chairman for Chico Rancheria, Machupta, Chico Rancheria. I'm honored here to stand here with these leaders. Mr. Ramos, thank you for putting this all together to get the word out about what's happening in the university system. I am lucky, and I hope this happens at Chico State. We have a tribal relations department that is very strong of what's going on at the university, not just for the students, but for these remains. And I'm going to shout out to Rachel McBride, who is running that department. And we were talking is how do we get the word out? So I'm asking these tribal leaders today and anybody else here, if you got a university that's close, let us know. We want to be able to help them get a tribal relations in their school so they can address what is going on with the remains, with their students, be one solid people showing that we're not gone. We're still here. We'll be here for a long, long time. But we need to address these remains that need to come back to our people. We have a gentleman in the tribe, Mr. Kyle McHenry. He's our TIPO officer who is pushing really hard to work with the other tribes in Northern California to get some of the remains so we can give them rest. We have some property. It's unknown, but we have property to put those remains to rest and artifacts. So thank you, tribal leaders. Thank you, sir and ma'am, for bringing us together. And even though President Newsom has tried to do his best for us Native people, we still need funding for NAGPRO. We still need funding to address all this. And we hope he can hear this, that work with your team and work with us, and let's get this done for our people, because I don't want to be a box later in the future. So let's get this done. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to all the tribal leaders who made their way here today to speak on this very important issue. We do have another member of the Assembly, Devin Mathis, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I want to thank Chairman Cisco, too. I represent the Santa Rosa, Tachi, Yokut, and give homage to my home tribe, the Tule River Yokut people as well. Too often in government, we get administrators that like to placate us to the problems and the issues. They like to say, oh, we heard the report, we're going to comply now. And it happens all the time. But this, we have to take action. Because as already said, ancestors aren't specimen to be labeled and studied, bagged and tagged in boxes. These are our people, our first people, friends, family members, historic stories for what built us to these points. And the utmost respect needs to be given. That's why we're here today. That's why we started this caucus. That's why we keep pushing, and we're not going to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for that. And you hear the voices that were up here at the podium, hearing firsthand the frustration that over 28 years, when repatriation was to be happening, now we find through this audit that it was far and in between. So we have to move forward. AB 389 is a bill that I'll be moving, I'll be amending to start to address this issue. But we also want to make sure that 28 years from now, that we're not standing here again saying nothing has happened. We want to make sure that we work as California's first people and as legislators to ensure that the repatriation starts to happen. And that means working together with the Cal State University system, with the state of California. This is something that now the legislature, now that we're aware of it, is not going to take a blind eye to. We're going to start to hold accountability, and starting with this hearing that's going to take place. I want to thank everybody for being here, but it is now a call to action to find out why these repatriations haven't taken place. And even that, you can see by these billboards, some have not even begun the process, which was supposed to be happening since 1995. We cannot tolerate this anymore. It's time that truly the voice of California's first people is heard in all these venues across the state. I want to thank you all for attending. The hearing will take place in room 447 immediately after this press conference. Thank you for attending.